7.4 on IMDb. That is the rating for the episode that I consider to be the most underrated episode within all of ReZero, and an episode that I quite honestly hold within the top 3 episodes within the entire series up until this point. And that episode in question is going to be ReZero Season 1, Episode 13, Self-Proclaimed Knight, Natsuki Subaru. This episode right here is what takes ReZero from the start, from being a decent anime with a very interesting plot and a good story, to one that facilitates multi-layered characters and a story that is really driven by change. So today, that's exactly what I am going to be talking about. ReZero Season 1, Episode 13, Self-Proclaimed Knight, Natsuki Subaru, and why this is probably the most underrated anime episode, not only within ReZero, but probably within all of anime. So if you're into this type of content, if you enjoy this type of analytical stuff and ReZero, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to check out my membership if you are interested in supporting me directly. Anyways, as I was saying, let's go ahead and get right into the video. When this episode first aired, and even up until now, people watch this episode, and this is the determining factor for if they drop ReZero or if they continue the series, as when you watch this episode, it is admittingly one of the hardest episodes to watch within all of anime. And that's not because of any sort of gore or, disgusting content that you may find normally within a ReZero episode, such as episode 15 or latter episodes within season 2 that could make it hard to watch for those reasons, but rather because of the actions of our main character, Natsuki Subaru. As our main character, somebody who has shown flaws up until this point, Natsuki Subaru displayed one of the most disgusting acts of humanity seen within anime, in which this episode is able to reveal the true nature and the true side of Natsuki Subaru, the one that has been hidden behind this false act he has put up until this point within the anime. The viewer must watch as Subaru seamlessly and stupidly digs himself into a deeper and deeper hole up until the point to the end of the episode, where we witness him get into a full-blown screaming match with our main heroine, that being Amelia, and Subaru essentially telling her that she is wrong and wrong within all of her actions, and essentially spitting in her face and saying that everything and everywhere she has gone within life and up until this point has been due to him. It is this true showing of character and this character flaw that leads to many people dropping ReZero, and is exactly what led to this episode receiving the rating that it has on IMDb, as people watch this episode and look at it at a surface level and look at our main character, Natsuki Subaru, and grade it only upon his actions without the context of future episodes and the context of previous episodes. If I'm being quite honest, I think this episode is a true testament to media literacy, and how people generally react toward this episode is a good test on how literate they are. As admittingly, as a huge ReZero fan and a huge fan of Subaru, this episode is hard to watch. It is gross. It is nasty to see somebody get treated such a way, and for such a face to be put on in retrospect to all of the actions that have been committed up until this point. It feels like a betrayal from your main character, and is honestly quite gross, but it is being able to recognize that and what happens forward, and recognize this as a inevitable step for growth that really determines, the factor and the facilitation of this episode. Despite all that has been said, and despite how gross these actions were from Subaru's actions within episode 13 of ReZero were necessary. From the very first point of the series, they were also foreshadowed, as within the very first scene of ReZero, Subaru is subtly characterized as a bit of a loner, somebody shopping inside of a convenience store late at night, reading manga, picking up ramen, and glaring off into the future and into the window at couples walking together, and honestly leaving with a bit of a face of disgust. Through this, we get a bit of a hint at Subaru's true nature and his character of a envious Hikikimori, somebody who longs for relationships and clearly is a bit cut off from the world around him. It is immediately after this in which we see Subaru walk out of this convenience store that he is thrusted into the world of ReZero, and we see quite the juxtaposition for his character and how he is acting, as within the convenience store it is clear that he is a quiet guy, somebody laid back, and this is how he's characterized. While in contrast, the second he is summoned to the ReZero world, he immediately recognizes what is going on and knows immediately that he has been isekai'd and summoned to another world. And despite being the laid back guy he first was appearing, is now extremely henceforth, excited and already questioning, where are my superpowers? Where are my abilities? Where if the average person, if this happened to them, they would be quite scared and they would not know what is going on. They would be longing for their parents. But the truth is, with Natsuki Subaru, from the moment he was summoned, he was excited, and he had already accepted the fact that he would probably never go back to his old world or see his parents again, because that is the type of person he is and the type of growing up that he had. From the moment Natsuki Subaru was summoned into the ReZero world, he went into it with the wrong mindset. Growing up as a Hikikimori, somebody who always lacked a bit of an identity from a young age due to constantly being in the shadow of his father and constantly being compared to the great Kenichi Natsuki, as we see later unfold and told to us within the episodes of Parent and Child, Subaru had no character. He was somebody who lacked and was empty inside, or at least that is what he told himself. It is this development and this identity crisis that developed his Hikikimori problems and led to him being a shut-in that sat inside all day and played video games. On top of this, it is this identity complex that led to Subaru trying many different avenues and routes within life, whether that was being the funniest in the room, or being the kindest in the room, or being the smartest, or being the fastest. Subaru constantly longed and looked for a place to which he could distinguish his own personality and his own identity, something that was abstract and different from that of his father. As said, it is this identity crisis that led to the cumulative collapse of Subaru's mental health, in which he stopped going to school and stopped dealing with the mental pressure of everything that was around him. And it is this same identity crisis that leads to Subaru's excitement when first isekai'd into the ReZero world. As for Subaru, this was not being taken away from everything he loved, that being his parents and, the world that he came from. It was a chance at a new opportunity, a chance at a new life, and a chance to finally be his own person, distinguished from his father or any preconceived notion that he had within his previous world. He could finally make Subaru Natsuki his own identity. From the moment Amelia is able to save Subaru within the first episode and show an act of kindness that he longed for so long within his old world, he immediately projected his own ideas and values onto her and longed for his identity to be placed within her own goals, throwing himself to the side. Despite Amelia explicitly stating that she never asked for his help and stating that he should not expect anything in return, Subaru projects his own ideal and puts the value of the name that is Natsuki Subaru onto Amelia and helping her get what she wants within life and solving her goals, and within this case, helping find her insignia. He tells himself it is for a noble cause and to help her, but in reality, this is all just for Natsuki Subaru, because Natsuki Subaru is attempting to project himself onto others in a desperate case and hope of trying to find an identity for himself. What Subaru is illicit to realizing is that you cannot just project an identity, and that it takes actual character growth to develop as a person and become your own being. Within the first episode of ReZero, when Subaru sees Amelia doing what she does, he sees himself within her subconsciously and says that anybody who acts like that and throws everything they're doing to the side just for the case of helping somebody else is going to get nowhere in life. And Subaru knows this because he himself has been through this before and has had this mindset. So he finds it that he needs to insinuate and fix her, when in reality he is just trying to fix himself and find his own identity within the character of somebody else. This inability to actually listen to Amelia, and more so his goal of treating her less as her own person and her own human, and more so rather as a goal and something to achieve within this new world, that is ultimately what drives Subaru on this downward spiral, and his inability to actually understand where she is coming from within arc 3 of the series, and ultimately what leads to this episode 13 conflict that we witness, in which he projects all of his own self-ideals onto her, just as they have been deeply rooted from the very start of their very first interaction. Subaru is essentially talking to himself within this scene, and you could see these subtle cracks as the series progresses to arc 3, and more specifically within arc 2, in which we see Subaru continuously and wrongly attempt to push himself to the edge and push himself to near exhaustion and death from that, just for the approval of others. And I know this is represented through a hyperbolic way, in which he is looking for the approval of Rem and Ram, who are actually actively trying to kill him, and return by death being insinuated, but the point still stands, and it is there to represent that Subaru is going about things the wrong way, in which he needs to lay back and rely on the people around him. And that is exactly what leads to the lap pillow scene that we see with Subaru and Amelia. And notice that it is only when Subaru carves this emotional connection with the person around him and shows himself being emotionally vulnerable and not trying to be any sort of person he is not, is when he is able to progress through the problem of arc 2, that being Rem and Ram not having any trust in him and thinking he is a bad person. Regardless of these moments of growth and potential we see for Subaru's character, which are going to be what develop him later down the line with Rem and lead to moments such as from Zero, it is the inevitable crashing of all of this, mixed with the fact that he has returned by death and going through these traumatic events and not being able to fully tell everybody around him about it, that leads to the inevitable crash that we see within arc 3. And as I mentioned, this episode and the argument between Subaru and Amelia. The moment Subaru meets somebody such as Julius, his ego is put on full display, and Subaru's cracks really do begin to show, as the jealousy and envy that he faces when going up against somebody like this is put on full display, and Subaru's inability to realize his lack lack of character, and the projection he thrusts this upon Amelia is thrusted into our faces, in which in the argument Subaru explicitly tells Amelia that he did all of this for her sake, in which she reminds him that from the very start she never asked for any of this. He tries to claim that he thrust it into the royal capital after she told him not to, and fought Julius after she told him not to, all for her sake, when this was never the case. And she tells him straight to his face that Natsuki Subaru did not do this for Amelia, but Natsuki Subaru did this for Natsuki Subaru. And this mixed with Amelia's inability to fully understand what's going on through Return by Death and the mental exhaustion Subaru has been exerting up until this point, it leads to the inevitable crash, and Subaru thenceforth going ahead and telling Amelia everything he thinks about himself to her, in which we see a projection of self-hatred and deeply rooted insecurity thrusted forward onto Amelia, in which all Amelia can do is sit there and watch as Natsuki Subaru's face shrivels up into a honestly disgusting look. This argument in this entire scene within episode 13 is one of the most realistic and human portrayals of a character I have seen within all of media, and it is from this moment forward that I started taking ReZero seriously as a piece of media and realized that ReZero was not just a cool fantasy with isekai abilities and a cool ability like Return by Death, but is a character-driven story which we see the development and the highs and lows that of Natsuki Subaru, and this episode was about as low as it gets on a, social factor. Any series that has the ability to show their main character in such a disgusting insight and have the ability to turn it around and make him such a likable character within future arcs and make his actions come around is one that deserves praise and one that deserves attention. And that is exactly what this episode is able to do, as it portrays Natsuki Subaru as a disgusting pig, and there really is no other way to put it. He is a deeply insecure man who projects said insecurity onto the woman that he claims to love, when really he uses her as a goal and means to thrive himself forward within this new world, because he lacks an identity. So he latches on to the first thing he saw, in which he thinks he can change her, when in reality the only things that needs changing is himself, and he needs to start from zero. The fact that everybody around Subaru but him is able to recognize this, that truly makes it so frustrating, but also makes it so great, as we see him go on this inevitable journey within arc 3, and we see Rem being there for him despite all of his flaws and all of his crimes, even though he has been a horrible person in general, because she knows there is more to Natsuki Subaru than that vile creature that was shown at that point. Subaru must come to terms with that he is not the protagonist within everyone else's story. He is not this quote-unquote knight. He is not Amelia's savior by any sort of means. In reality, he is just a person, and that is all he is. But despite this, we see Subaru go through ups and downs, and we see the climactic highs of Arc 3 and the climactic lows, whether that be episode 15 or the later episodes such as episode 18, and we see Subaru finally come to terms with this and fully confront the type of person he is within From Zero. He is able to realize that Amelia is her own complex person with her own complex problems and her own complex issues. She is in no way a prize or a goal for Subaru just because he has been isekai to this new world. She is her own person, and on top of this, he is able to learn and thrust aside the ego of his and team up and rely on the other camps around him, realizing that he can't just brute force his way through every problem, whether it be through Return by Death or through anger and through vile means. He needs to realize and recognize that some things need to be given up to gain the support of other people around him. It teaches him how to strategize and be a smarter person. And on top of all of this, as I previously mentioned, the best of all of this comes from Zero and his ultimate confrontation with Rem after being at emotional rock bottom throughout all of Arc 3, in which Subaru is able to finally recognize not just the person he is within the world of ReZero, but the person he was before being isekai'd, and recognize that those two people are the same person, and that Subaru cannot just magically become some sort of hero because he wants to be. He needs to start from zero, confront the type of person he is, and change at his core. And it is only when you start from zero that you can actually begin to change as a person and grow as a person. And it is Rem who helps him recognize this. And that is why Subaru would have never been able to run away with Rem, because doing so would be him continuously running away from his character issues and his character problems. As Subaru looking for new facets and abilities within life, whether that being the best at running or being the best at school, or being a hero within a new world where he was isekai'd, are all just reflections of his core character and his tendency to have escapism issues and run away from any sort of problem that confronts his identity and his core character as a whole. And within this moment, we see Subaru finally confront all of that after all of the lows and the disgusting moments we saw through episode 13 to 18 and all of the gross moments of Natsuki Subaru. It is from this point forward within arc 3 that we see Subaru grow as a person and finally recognize Amelia for the person she is and recognize his flaws and realize that he must go about things the right way, and brute forcing his way through any sort of problem or any sort of issue will generally just get him nowhere in life. It is then where we see Subaru change not for any other person but himself. He is able to instill value into his goals, not because he wants to for Amelia, but because he wants to for Natsuki Subaru, and he wants to prove to himself that he can in fact do this, in which, as said, we see Subaru progress through arc 3 and ultimately get to tell Amelia and save her and tell her that he loves her not because of any sort of illicit reason or, superficial idea, but because he genuinely just loves her and wants to help her, not for any other reason than the fact that he does. It is all of this that generally leads me to believe arc 3 is one of the best arcs within all of anime and one of the best arcs within ReZero, and that episode 13 and the core problem of this is one of the best moments within anime, because without this moment and this emotional low within episode 13 of ReZero, none of this after and none of this growth would have had the impact that it did. It would not have been able to facilitate the same amount of emotion that it was able to. And on top of this, within later arcs such as arc 4 and moments within parent and child such as within season 2, these emotions wouldn't have monikered such emotional stakes and emotional value and made the context of scenes such as within episode 13 of season 1 as pivotal as it is, because without this moment and without this low and without Tappei's ability to display the true flaws and true disgusting nature of Natsuki Subaru's character within that world up until this point, we would not have had the same character, or it would not have been the same show. So what I am ultimately trying to say is that episode 13 of ReZero is a pivotal moment, not just for Natsuki Subaru's character, but for ReZero as a whole and its message. It is able to show us that growth is not a linear path. People do not grow linearly. You can grow as a person and then have a tank after that. It is not an exponential function. You can grow a little and fall a little, and that is exactly what we see within ReZero. This all reflects what Subaru's mom is able to tell him at the end of Parent and Child, is that it's not about what matters or happens in the beginning or the middle. It's all in about how it ends, and it's all in about being able to get back up from no matter what point you are and no matter how low you are, even if you got to level 50 and fall all the way back down to level 0. What is more important is your ability to get back up from level 0 and start that climb again despite all the trouble you have been through. And that is exactly what we see Natsuki Subaru do within episode 13 of ReZero, and is exactly what drives his character to be one of the best within all of media, and exactly what leads me to believe that episode 13 of ReZero is one of the most pivotal moments, not just within ReZero but within anime, and quite honestly is one of the most underrated episodes of all time. That about does it for the video today, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I have talked about this a bit before, but I really wanted to go in depth on this as I put this within my top 3 ReZero episodes, because I genuinely and truly think it is one of the best episodes of anime of all time, and I think it is truly underrated, and the fact that it has a 7.4 on IMDb is quite honestly disgusting. But yeah, anyways, guys, thank you for watching so much. I'm sorry for the lack of content lately. I just had a crazy immunology test today. I'm a STEM major, so it gets a bit grim. It's been hard to make videos lately because I've been so locked in on studying and stuff like that. But I'm back because the test is over. So literally making this right after I took my test. Let me know what type of content you guys want to see. Yeah, I mean, I'm tired. Thank you guys for watching, and peace.